we don't seem to have very many happy families at the moment if we're talking about, lack of reconciliation between King and Harry or avoiding each other this week. We're just talking about Brooklyn Beckham and the Beckham situation. Rob, what's going on with Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor and his daughters? There's a report saying that Princess Eugenie is going to cut off or wants to, or at the moment is not speaking to Andrew after everything that's gone on.
There may well have been a sort of breakdown in communication. I mean, I've spoken to people close to them before and, I've got on fairly well with Sarah. I would say I wouldn't take that seriously. I would believe that the girls, both of those girls are very forgiving. I think they're both charming, actually. And I would have thought, even if there's been a bit of a breakdown in communication, that it won't last indefinitely. I think they've had to put up with a lot, and they've probably want to focus on their own families at the moment. But I can't believe that either of his daughters will abandon Andrew completely.
Sarah, should we? Rob says no, but would you worry or fear or expect a kind of social media post from Eugenie or Beatrice in a Brooklyn Beckham or
No.
Prince Harry style?
No, and that family has always been extremely loyal to one another, no matter what has been going on. But I do think for Beatrice and Eugenie, this has been excruciating and very, very difficult indeed. And, as this was reaching its peak last year, Eugenie was there in New York promoting the work of her anti-slavery collective. And there we are talking about her father's friendship with someone who had trafficked young girls. So it is extremely difficult for them. Look, if there is a degree of self-preservation to say, I just can't deal with you and this at the moment, I don't know. But on the other hand, there will also be a duty of care and a concern about...
Yeah, I think so. They were all at the christening.
Yeah, so he was at the christening, though, but he was at the church service, wasn't he? And then
we've also got to say that, with Andrew, it looks, from what the King's done, he moves out probably by the end of this month. There's still a lot of people, myself included, that thinks this guy really needs to answer some serious questions. And maybe his daughters are just saying, well, if you didn't do anything, why don't you come out and give evidence over on a Zoom link, but give evidence and try and clear your name? Because as it stands, we're all supposed to believe him when he says, I have nothing to do with this. Well, answer some serious questions. If it had been me or it had been Matt or anybody else, we'd probably been extradited. We'd certainly been looked into by Scotland Yard. There's no way this guy should be allowed to swan around from moving out of a palace and we say, oh, that's a shame, he's now lost his title. Who cares? If you're involved in something that is this serious, you should at least have the decency to answer questions under oath.
But one thing that we know about Andrew is that he doesn't listen to advice from anybody.
But he always said at the very beginning, in fact, the reason he settled was because he said they didn't want to upset the Queen's Jubilee. The fact is there are serious questions that need answering.
Absolutely.
And he should answer them as any decent person would.
100%.
And I cannot believe at this day and age that just because you're very wealthy, just because you're the son of the former Queen, the brother of the King, that somehow you move from one big house to another slightly boggier house on a Sandringham estate, and that is justified. Answer questions under oath and stop making out, in some ways, you are a victim.
Yes.
Well, Rob, I have a theory here that I thought privately and not maybe said out loud, see how we go. But when he was a prince and when he was the Duke of York, I never thought there was any chance the FBI or the Metropolitan Police would ever speak to him. When I've been trying to find out about Marsh Farm, we broke the story that he's moving to Marsh Farm a couple of weeks ago, but when we were trying to investigate, we're told, well, he has data protection rules because he's a private individual. Is the stripping of Prince and Duke mean that he is now just a private individual and that opens up the chance that police or FBI could speak to him? They wouldn't when he was a prince or a duke, but now he's not a prince or a duke.
But the Scotland Yard have not even asked any questions. The only person that's asked any questions is in a set interview with Emily Maitlis, not under oath. In this day and age, that really isn't good enough. And I think this is probably the biggest scandal to impact the royal family ever since the abdication. And it's still not resolved, and it will never be resolved. It's no good the King and William saying, oh, we've dealt with it now.
And he always
It's not good
said
enough.
that he would help
He
with
did,
the
that's the point.
inquiries and
He
he would
did.
work to help
Clear his
the
name
victims.
and help the victims. What has he done to help the victims? Absolutely nothing.
And I think that is one of the biggest bones of contention with his
He's
daughters
done nothing.
as well, that he has done nothing to address the suffering of Jeffrey Epstein's victims.
Personally, going to Marsh Farm is not far enough away. He should be exiled out of the country. If he cannot answer questions under oath, kick him out the country.
How much time do you think he will actually spend at Marsh Farm?
Not hardly
or will
any.
he be in the Middle East?
I think the Middle East is an absolute nailed-on area, along with Juan Carlos and other people. But the point of it is, just because you've got money and because you had a privileged position doesn't mean that you should be allowed to get away with not answering questions. They've only asked him to actually give evidence from England, so he's not going to be extradited on a video link. He can't. But he won't do it. I wonder why, because we know that he'd crack under the intense questioning, because he... we now know.
Well, he didn't serve very well under Emily
Pizza,
Maitlis's
no
regime,
sweating, no Pizza Hut. Come on, it's ridiculous.
I think the idea is if he did actually, because he's not given evidence, but over video link, he could perjure himself and put himself into more trouble. So the idea is just shut up and say nothing.
But if, as he says, he's telling the truth and he had nothing to do with it, he's got no problems whatsoever, has he?
Yeah. Well, Marsh Farm, as I say, we've kept an eye on it. A lot of work's being done. We think should be there very soon. It's meant to be his permanent home, but this is the royal family. Who knows? Things change all the time, and we could see him in the Middle East. But the King's paying for him, so who else is going to pay for him if he doesn't?
And that gives him his UK base, doesn't it? Whatever happens, whether he goes to the Middle East, whether he goes to Switzerland or whatever, that means he has a UK base.
All right. Good old Andrew. I had the immense fortune of going to Scotland this week. I joined the King and Queen. They were in Edinburgh. The King was at Palace of Holyrood House. Queen Camilla became, I don't know if you see this, she was in a Beano cartoon. Yeah. And then the Prince and Princess of Wales were in Stirling for 3 events. They went to see Team GB ahead of the Winter Olympics.
Curling in Stirling.
Joining the curling in Stirling. A wonderful weaving place, a charity where they were helping make the longest scarf in the world. And then, of course, they finished it off with going to the pub. I thought they looked great, particularly William and Catherine. Catherine's jacket, Sarah.
The coat. She had a double-breasted tartan coat, and that was made specifically for this engagement. She worked with Johnstone's of Elgin, a heritage Scottish brand, to design the tartan and make the coat. And that fits in, as well as a visit to the weavers as well, very much the work she's been doing around the British textile industry and supporting them, when they went to Wales and she visited at mill there, same in Yorkshire when she was looking at the sock making, for example. She's very much promoting the British textile industry. And also, as they visited the weaving charity in Scotland, that tied in with other elements, young people, mental health, sustainability. They are weaving together, if you excuse the pun, all of their various interests in these visits very carefully.
Catherine was, not criticised, but she was, became bottom of the list last year for the amount of engagements that she carried out. We can't give away too much, but because a couple of embargoes have come through recently, but they've set off at quite a pace this year. There seems to be a lot more work. We were told that at least once a week, at least once a month, I think it was, they will be doing some best of British project. And it really does feel like with this Stirling trip, it's kicked off what appears to be a busy week